No.
But disregarding fatalities, though, in terms of how many people are actually contracting the virus, when are you guys witnessing, like, okay, this is a problem that it might spread at a much more rapid global rate?
Well, our first assessment on this outbreak was just basically to estimate what could be the actual number of cases happening in Wuhan, because the ones that you can count are actually just the tip of the iceberg. There might be much more than the ones that they can count, because there are a lot of asymptomatic cases, so people that got the disease and didn't have any symptom, so they didn't go to the doctor or anything, so they will like ghost to us because you cannot see them in the system basically. I forgot where I was going with this.
What I'd ask was if you
estimate the number of cases
or estimate that this would be a global problem and that would spread very rapidly.
Well, still is like the outbreak is like very localized in some sense. It's not widespread in another countries, so still it could be. Yeah. I think it's like still can be stopped in China.
Yeah, as of right now, there's just one country with what the WHO would call sustained human-to-human transmission, which is China. And so this outbreak hasn't been classified as a pandemic, which is a much scarier word, yet, because you need at least two countries. So right now it's relatively contained, but we'll see. Things are happening so fast, right? Like you see the numbers change. Mm-hmm. So we'll see what happens in the next couple weeks. Okay.
Hi, I'm Anna.
Hi, I'm Jessica.
And this is our Golden Hour.
Oh God, what's going on? Where am I going? Dad?
Yes, my son. I am Deuce, the deer god.
I'm so confused. Who am I?
Derek. Your true name is Dercules. Dercules.
Wait, what?
Yes. You are Dercules, the god of the forest. Season 5.
Hosted by your favorite podcast host, Big Bochi. You already know the deal, mother. What's up? And the double clap signifies the start of an episode. And before we begin, guys, hey everyone, this is Conor, Holway of the Golden Hours podcast. And listen, if you by chance get any sort of value from this episode, whether you laugh, you cry, you learn something, or you're entertained, just share it with a friend. And if you don't have friends, you shouldn't be
listening to podcasts.
Definitely not. I hope you guys have some friends. I have a couple myself. And listen, who's in the building before I introduce our guests?
I'm Sarah Slugs. I'm so excited to be here today. I'm really excited for this episode.
And as I was saying to you guys earlier, I'm very proud of Sarah for going out. I was like, listen, go line up an episode. Figure out something you guys want to talk about, who you want to have up here, what's interesting you. And she reached out to you, set up the email, followed through. That's my dog right there. Good work.
I'm so excited.
And so listen, I normally, when we have guests up, I don't normally do like extensive research, but this seemed like a kind of a complicated topic to us. So
for us too.
Yeah. So it seemed kind of complicated. So I was like, all right, I'm going to try my best. So before you guys got here, I was just smashing podcasts on the coronavirus. And I think I have a kind of a good concept of what's going on, but you guys will probably debunk this. And so on my right, I have Jessica Davis and Anna Pastore of the MOBS Labs. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yep.
Cool. Do you guys want to just give a quick synopsis of who you are and what you do?
Sure. So, hi everybody. I'm Anna Pastore Piontti. That's the whole last name. I'm an associate research scientist at the MOBS Lab at Northeastern University. I'm originally from Argentina. I'm a physicist by training, but nowadays I do epidemiological modeling, basically.
Cool. I'm Jessica Davis. I'm a third-year graduate student at Northeastern in the Network Science Department. I study how things spread. So sometimes that's information, but at this present time, it is viruses.
And so your primary goal the past 3 weeks has been, let's assess the coronavirus and see if it's a threat globally, right? Let's do some research and let's figure it out. Am I debunking that right?
Yes, it's sort of
Do
what.
you mind just moving up a
Oh,
little?
sure.
There you go.
It's sort of what we do basically every time there is an emergent disease or a new pathogen. We want to have a better understanding, see where it's going to go next, if we can do anything to prevent the spreading, and start like gathering data from usually it's just from the starting place. In this case is Wuhan, China. And when we just manage to have some data, start to think how we can model this or what we can do to have a better understanding of the situation, basically.
And so how do you two work together? Like, do you work like closely, or do you guys analyze the same data?
Yeah, so it's very much, so we have a team here, so it's me and Anna, and then the head of our lab is Alex Vespignani, and then we have another lab mate, Matteo Canazzi, and we all we have this model that kind of attempts to understand how this virus is spreading, and then from that we have this model data. We have real data that's observed that all has to be processed, and
yes, basically the first part is the most difficult part. That is setting up the pipeline of how we work, like who will do the simulations of the model, where we are going to do it, because they are very computational expensive. So who is doing that part? Then like a first digestion of the data, then once we produce the data, what is important and how we validate our models, so what kind of things we need to measure from our data to see if we are like getting it wrong or right, basically. If we can match things from the real world that we can observe, basically.
And so how are you specifically gathering the data?
Right now, we are lucky that there are a lot of like publicly available sources. Basically, China itself is putting a lot of data out there about the number of cases, at least, that are happening in Wuhan and in other provinces in China. And then also you have to follow the news. So sometimes, like the first 2 weeks, the first 2 hours in the morning, my job was basically to look at the news and basically try to figure out, there is a case here, there is a case there. Was this person coming from Wuhan? When that person fell sick? When that person actually went to hospital? When that person flew to somewhere and things like that. So at the beginning, it's like a crowdsource kind of situation, basically.
Well, yeah, I think one reason this virus is making people so nervous is because we're getting information from China, and people think they haven't always been the most reliable source of information. So how do you guys vet the information now? Or is it just like, this kind of sounds true, let's just like toss it in the model?
Well, this time I think they have that idea because back in the 2003 Hong Kong SARS outbreak, basically, they were like first they were like hiding the information about that. They weren't like saying that there was an outbreak when there was an outbreak happening. But this time they did it right away. So this time I don't think there is a reason to not trust them at all, I think. And they are the people basically fighting the war against the virus right now.
I know. I just heard something that Wuhan right now is on total isolation, right? Mm-hmm. Like people there cannot leave. If you go in a public place, you have to wear a mask. Is that right?
Yeah, I think they shut down like flights out of Wuhan on January 23rd, and then a couple of days later they shut down kind of like the city in itself, like the driving,
That's
the roads.
wild.
Yeah, it's the biggest quarantine that ever happened.
Yeah.
And I think people don't understand, because when they think of China and big cities, they think of Beijing, but all the cities are massive in China. Wuhan is about the size of New York City, correct?
It's like 30 million people, the metropolitan,
That
total
is
metropolitan
insane.
area.
That's more than New York, right?
Yeah.
Well, metropolitan, so she means all the
it's like
surrounding
suburbs.
neighborhoods.
Yeah,
I think the city center is like almost maybe a little bit bigger than New York City.
Yeah, it's
That's
like 10
insane.
with 15 millions, like in the center urban area. But then, like the whole catchment area that we are considering is 30 million people. So there are countries that don't have that many people, basically.
Well, I mean, it's bigger than Massachusetts.
Yes.
Definitely.
That's crazy. I mean, like,
insane.
imagine Boston times 50. That's what that would be, because Boston's 600,000. Oh my God. So all these people right now, I mean, you guys aren't news correspondents, but presumably they can't leave, and then the Chinese government is like just keeping everyone in the same place, or?
I don't know.
Okay.
In that sense, it's like no more than what we can see from the news, basically, all we know.
So I had, again, when I was researching and like trying to learn as much as I can, the SARS virus was coming up a lot. Can you guys speak to what the SARS virus was?
Well, the SARS virus is from the same family as this virus. It's a rhinovirus, basically from the same kind of family, SARS, MERS.
Can you just...
Yeah,
You'll feel it
sorry.
one fist away.
SARS and MERS are from the same family as this virus, and they're all rhinovirus. Basically, affect your upper respiratory tract, and you have the same symptoms as like in the flu. When you have the flu, you will sneeze, you will have runny nose, and in the worst case scenario, you develop like a pneumonia and all this kind of stuff. Those are the complicated things. But in general, it's not, I would say, worse than the flu in terms of symptoms.
Okay, so this is just like a massive flu.
That kills people.
But the flu
Well,
kills
the flu
The
also
flu
kills
killed
people.
people
That's
too.
true.
So this year alone, we were looking up statistics in the car right over here. The flu has killed 10,000 people in the U.S.
And that's
Already?
consistent. It's pretty consistent every year like that.
I know that
Yeah.
this year is especially severe.
Yeah,
Did you guys get your flu shots this year?
of course.
You didn't get it? Yes.
Lie.
Oh.
Say yes.
I don't want to say that on a podcast where my boss could hear.
I got mine at CVS.
Yeah,
Easy.
me too.
I got mine after my roommate got the flu, and I was like, ooh, I should have gotten that shot.
Did you feel sick after you got yours?
No.
Everyone's like, you get the flu shot and you feel kind of sick after. It didn't. I think that's fake.
Well,
I
you
think
can have
you
something
do.
else, but
Oh,
not the
true.
flu.
Well, I know, but what they say is like, in a flu shot, they're giving you a little bit of the flu.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're either giving you the dead.
the dead
I'm not a
virus.
biologist. I can't speak to this.
So, you guys initially find out about the coronavirus. What are you doing before you hear about the virus in the lab? What are you guys working on?
Yeah, so I think, like Anna mentioned earlier, we kind of were in the process of just making our model better. So integrating different types of data. So right now, our model is very dependent on flight patterns and how people move around. And then there's a push to actually include more detail on how people are talking. So like what age groups are talking to what age groups. So we know that not everyone, I don't interact with people who are, as many people who are in their upper 60s than I do people who are like in their mid 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And so
How old are you?
25.
Okay, word. I'm 24.
Nice.
Young and working hard.
I'm 29.
You're 26.
Great. And so right now, I think the push is like
Yeah, so
inputting these-
basically what we are trying to do, it's to improve the model, and one of the projects that we were doing, besides integrating, I don't know, like more updated airline network data, is to improve the way that people interact with each other. So we are trying to introduce more data about the heterogeneity of the contact patterns. So and that accounts for family size, where you work, where you go to school, and things like that. We know that even within US, you have very different patterns in Utah than in New York or DC, social patterns. So basically, because when we are not working for something that is like an outbreak like this, we are always trying, one of the projects that we are always working is on the influenza. And so those are diseases that can transmit just through contact with other person. You don't need like a vector or anything like that. Like Zika is a disease that needs a vector, for instance, that is the mosquito. So we need to characterize these patterns. And for instance, we have like this thing that we call them contact matrices that describe these patterns. And we know that there are very different In China, for instance, that is a country with a one-child policy, so you don't have siblings together spending time at home,
True.
but you have it here in U.S. So how the disease spreads, the same disease spreads, depends on these contact patterns, basically.
So to simplify things, what is the difference between how diseases spread in China versus the U.S.? Is there a stark difference between the two?
No, the natural history of the disease is the same. What it changes how people interact with each other, basically, and that affects the final outcome of the outbreaks. Basically, is like how many people will get infected has to do with how many people a person is in average in contact with, basically. So if you have more people in contact, maybe it could be for instance, the overall attack rate could be higher. The attack rate basically of the disease is the number of people that gets infected by the end of the outbreak.
Okay, so in a metropolis, it's likely that a disease will spread faster because people are more on top of each other. Correct? Given the data,
it
or
could
am
be. Yeah.
But and this is a total generalization, but are Americans more social than the average Chinese person, therefore they have more contact with people in a day?
I don't know if you could make that claim.
No.
I don't even know how you would verify that claim. It's all dependent on your social network, and I think networks are cool, considering that's what I'm getting my degree in.
Yeah.
So, like, the fact that we do have these people who are social hubs, meaning that they are in contact with a lot of other different people. Infecting them may cause a lot more like subsequent infections. And so these, I don't know, the social network within different regions is kind of hard to
it's
like,
a different
quantify or
thing.
even-
So
There's
basically,
no way to generalize it.
yeah.
no.
Okay. So we have a producer for our show. His name's Frankie Films, and he's actually from China. And he said that the way this disease initially spread was because it was right around the Chinese New Year. A lot of people were traveling outside of the city. So it was centralized in Wuhan for a little bit, and then over time, it kind of just...
Because it was at the same time that they were having this
'Cause
big
everyone's
vacation, this big holiday that is for the New Year, I think.
So have you guys done specific research on that? Can you speak to that a little bit?
No, specifically, like we haven't modeled specifically the increase on people traveling those days.
I think it's something that people have definitely thought about. Like, will a lot of travel in during this time, like, actually help propagate this disease? And from the data that we have, which the data that you want is not necessarily the data that you have. I don't think we can actually make a claim that since there was a lot of travel, or since we think that there was a lot of travel during this time, that actually helped propagate it. But yeah, this isn't a good answer to your question.
No, I'm just trying to guide as much as you can. Slugs.
When Boston got there's someone in Boston with the virus. What was your reaction? Were you guys like, ooh, that's what?
You guys freak out.
Well,
No.
we were all working on Saturday.
Yeah, it was a nice Saturday, so
We were all together in the
least-
office. Yeah, I mean, Boston was ranked fairly high out of all U.S. cities for like our relative risk of seeing an imported case. So, and that's not. It was expected because we have Boston Logan here, and that's a pretty big airport.
Because
and
of
it's
the
a
international
and
flights.
it's a city with a lot of students, basically. So you know that people will come.
Is the risk higher on a college campus for getting like a virus like the coronavirus?
Well, what we do is at the level of city first. So it's like we can say if a city is at risk of observing a case or not. And the other thing we can quantify from our experience, like in schools, because it's a closed setting and you're in contact with many people during many hours, it's more likely than just staying at home with your roommate, for instance. But we don't do that.
Okay.
So on your list of cities at risk, Boston was relatively high. And what were other cities that were up there?
I think so. It was ranked higher if you just like kind of if you look at the U.S. cities. Now, if you look globally, Boston didn't make it in the top 25.
No.
The top 25
Yay.
are your like definitely. I know, good for us.
Yes, you have to consider that our model takes into account like more than 3,000 locations, basically. So, U.S. Boston could be top 40 in U.S., but or top 10 in U.S. But most of the places at risk were like major cities or close were cities in Southeast Asia and Australia and Europe. Most of them.
Yeah, and if you think of like the bigger airports like JFK and LAX, they're going to be ranked a lot higher than Boston.
Given land travel, what was the next most probable spot that you thought there might be an outbreak outside of Wuhan?
Ooh. Well, we rank the
Chinese
cities.
No, Chinese cities.
But I don't remember the names.
I know country-wise, like the top was Thailand, I think. It's like in our top 5, it was Thailand, Japan, South Korea,
Singapore,
and the U.S. might have been up there too.
Is Wuhan in southern China?
Like
so in the middle, most in the middle of China, I would say. Towards the southeast, but inland, basically. It's not on the coast.
Okay, so you realistically chose Thailand as a number one because land-wise it was the closest to Wuhan.
It's a factor of how many people are traveling there.
Yeah.
So you were asking about land travel. I think.
Well, we haven't like separated like land and flight. We have like the model combines basically the two things and say people go from A to B. So places in Singapore or Thailand were like the top places, not just because of the proximity. Because when a virus it's spreading, like distance doesn't make any sense anymore in this world that is so connected.
Does climate have an effect on it? Because I know that like Southeast Asia is very warm and damp. I don't know, like a very wet region, I guess. So like, I know some diseases like heat or could be like more resistant to heat or the cold. So would it make more sense for it to go to a hotter environment, or like can it survive in? Do we know if it could survive in different types of climates?
I'm not entirely sure. I know that the flu that depends on a lot some climate factors like humidity and temperature and precipitation. I think people even study precipitation.
The big problem, like I think now with the coronavirus, that is like at the same time that we have the flu season in the northern hemisphere, so it's like all the things get mixed up, so you don't know if you have the flu or you have the coronavirus.
The symptoms are like nearly identical, correct?
Yeah, so you're gonna feel like you have the flu as well, even if you have coronavirus.
Have you guys ever just been like thinking about coronavirus so much, like, oh my god, maybe I have it? Like, I feel a little tickle in my throat.
Because we know about statistics and probabilities, and we know that the people, it's more likely to get the flu than the coronavirus.
But it's in this city, though.
Yeah, but it's in a person that is... Yeah, one case that is isolated. I'm not fearing. I'm not buying masks.
Okay. Let's hope not. Next podcast, I should put a mask on. It's freaking me out.
No.
But so given the statistics now, you guys don't think Boston is at risk for an outbreak in the city?
At this moment, there is no reason to think that it's going to be like a big outbreak.
And what would it take for the disease to spread more rapidly? I mean, it's an exponential figure, right? It's like 2 people get it, then 4 people get it, then 8 people get it.
Yeah. So what we've seen right now is that closing. So we talked about this earlier. Like we closed Wuhan, we quarantined Wuhan, and some airline companies and some countries have put like travel restrictions such that people can't really go to and from China. And so they do this in the hopes that hopefully this will prevent people who are sick from coming to a country and maybe infecting other people there. However, this isn't a sustainable practice, right? So if you can think about American Airlines reducing flights from China for 3 months, like they would go bankrupt.
Yeah.
So, like,
it makes no sense to like basically stop all the flights, and because we know from our models and all the experience that we have doing this is like will only delay the disease a little bit. So you buy a few days as to prepare, but those are not like actually like measures that that will actually stop the outbreak.
So are there any actual viable practices to stop an outbreak?
The quarantine, the better like hygienic practices and things like
being
that.
clean.
Being clean, yeah. Wash your hands.
Get your
The
flu
same
shot.
as the flu. Get your flu shot. Cough on your elbows, sneeze on your elbows, and things like that.
At what point when a disease like the coronavirus, at what point are you like, oh shit, this is gonna destroy everybody? Like what numbers are you hitting? Like what are you worried about for deaths? Because right now it's
Any death is about same.
yeah, for sure. But I mean, you guys looking at stats all day. When are you guys like, okay, this is a real worldwide problem?
well, I mean, you probably know this better than I do, but if you were to compare this to other like bad pandemics, like the 1918 pandemic, the death rate or fatality rate was
Like 3%.
3%,
That's a lot of
and
people.
that's a lot.
But we have to like make clear that it's not like, for instance, many people say, oh, this percentage of people die of coronavirus. It has a case fatality rate of this value. And it's not just that you have to, divide the number of deaths over the number of cases or something like that, because that's not correct. You have to count for all the underlying conditions that each infected person has. So many people have like comorbidities and things that make them more propense to die. But
Yeah, so right now the fatality rate that
if you
we're
do that
observing
math,
is not nearly
High enough.
as high
Yeah.
as what
What is it right now?
I don't think we can actually estimate it per se, just because we don't understand all of the people who are passing away. Most of them are people with pre-existing conditions.
Yeah.
Oh, that
and
is
so-
not advertised on the news.
Well, yeah, obviously. The news just wants you to freak
yeah, they want
everybody
you
out.
to freak
So-
out,
I know, I
but
am
you don't
freaking
have
out.
to.
Well, you gotta relax.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
know,
no
am
one
I
should
gonna
freak out.
die?
No.
So, but disregarding fatalities, though, in terms of how many people are actually contracting the virus, when are you guys witnessing, like, okay, this is a problem that it might spread at a much more rapid global rate?
Well, our first assessment on this outbreak was just basically to estimate what could be the actual number of cases happening in Wuhan, because the ones that you can count are actually just the tip of the iceberg. There might be much more than the ones that they can count, because there are a lot of asymptomatic cases, so people that got the disease and didn't have any symptom, so they didn't go to the doctor or anything, so they will like ghost to us because you cannot see them in the system basically. I forgot where I was going with this.
What I'd ask was if you
to estimate the number of cases
or estimate that this would be a global problem and that would spread very rapidly.
Well, still is like the outbreak is like very localized in some sense. It's not widespread in another countries, so still it could be.
Yeah.
I think it's like still can be stopped in China.
Yeah, as of right now, there's just one country with what the WHO would call sustained human-to-human transmission, which is China. And so this outbreak hasn't been classified as a pandemic, which is a much scarier word, yet, because you need at least two countries. So right now it's relatively contained, but we'll see. Things are happening so fast, right? Like you see the numbers change. So we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks.
What's the lifespan of a virus like this normally? Like I'm just thinking, Jessica, when we were in like 8th or 9th grade, remember when the swine flu was popping?
Yeah,
Everyone-
I got it.
Oh,
I had the
God.
swine flu too.
You both had it?
Yeah.
Oh,
I was
you guys
down
go get a drink
for a
after
week.
this. You guys survived. Let's go.
We're survivors.
You got the swine flu?
Yeah.
Oh, is that why you do this now?
No.
No.
No, I remember it being awful though. I haven't gotten the flu since.
You built up the antibodies. You're good.
Yeah, my parents quarantined me in my room, and like my dad works at an auto body shop, so he brought home like masks. And every time they had to give me food, they would all have their masks on, like throw it in my room and dash.
We're out.
My parents still interacted with me, so I guess I'm like.
Well, I mean, it was just for like
A little
week
bit
and a half.
extreme, but it was the right thing to do.
It was like right when it came out, and they're like, this
Our
could
daughter's
be,
a monster.
they're like, this could be. I got it at like a sleepover camp, and they're like, oh my god, we sent her away, and now like she has this horrible disease, like we don't know what to do, and it was really scary. But I mean, I was just sick and slept for like a week, but I don't know.
Did you have similar symptoms?
Yeah, I think
I
was so
achy.
bad.
I
think I almost
not
like passed
fun.
out a couple of times.
Ooh.
But I remember explicitly the schools being empty, and so like half of my classmates were sick with
In my country, I remember that from the end of June, because in the southern hemisphere, the peak of the wave was before here, so here was like a little bit later during the year. We finished school like in June, so for us we have to go until July, and then it was like 2 months of like winter vacation that we have basically.
So yeah, when the swine flu was popping, how long did it last? Do you guys remember?
In
was
terms of how
short-lived,
long
wasn't
we could expect to see the outbreak, that's what you see, like you're asking basically. How long it will
When does
take
it-
to go away
When
the
does it slow
virus?
down? Like when is it not?
Oof. Well, it's depends on the situation in China, right? If they can stop it from spreading elsewhere, maybe in a few months, right?
Yeah, I would say like the swine flu lasted for a few months to a year, right? That was kind of the span of the outbreak, or the initial outbreak. But this one I would expect the same. But we could just get really good at like isolating people
Exactly.
and
So
stopping
everything depends on what's going on in China now.
Yeah,
basically.
and that's kind of what happened with SARS. It just kind of they got all the people who were sick isolated and they quarantined them, and eventually it just died out before it reaching a kind of gigantic, scary
Exactly.
proportions.
How do you assess that on a data level that the disease is now, or the virus is now, not as large of a risk globally? You just see less cases popping up, or
Yeah, so
Basically.
like you said earlier, you see like this right now we're in the exponential growth part, right? So we should expect to see some peak, and then after that it should go down.
it's a
and
parabola, right?
Yeah, so basically if you have seen
Something like that.
Yeah.
if you're familiar with any incidence curve or something like that they call it on the CDC website for the influenza, you will have this parabola. So at the beginning, when nothing is done to stop the outbreak, it will be growing on an exponential rate. But then now they're already trying to mitigate the outbreak, so the shape will change. So it won't be like a nice parabola, right? And then yes, you reach a peak, and then it goes down basically.
What if
So
it just keeps going?
no, because
There's a finite
exactly.
number of people in the world. So
Yeah, so
Eventually
eventually
go
we'll
down.
go. You will have
Eventually, just everyone will be gone.
exactly. Eventually,
It's the
you
point. Apocalypse.
yeah,
Whoa.
but it won't happen with the coronavirus.
Well, have you guys ever seen I Am Legend?
Yes.
Yeah.
Something similar. Do you remember the plot line for I Am Legend?
Yeah, I think it's a virus too, right? And
They
he at the
said
very
it
end.
they said that it cured cancer, then everyone got it, and it created it negated actually cancer, and everyone got this vicious virus, and then
Everyone became zombies or something.
exactly, except Will Smith, and he
Yeah.
saved the day.
Yeah.
We need more Will Smiths.
Yeah, exactly.
He's great.
Well, you guys will probably be the survivors if it reaches the U.S. and spreads, and you guys will be the ones to save the world. It'd be huge.
We have regular immune systems. So.
Okay.
We're probably lower than average because we don't sleep anymore.
Yeah, we don't sleep too many. We lack of sun.
So, is someone pressuring you guys right now to produce certain data to help them out and help find a solution? Is there like a government
Well, it's
agency
not that
you're
you
working with?
find a solution, but yeah, like we have like there are like the WHO and the CDC have different working groups that are usually like right now that we sometimes work on something else like influenza, and they have this group of modelers that we call it, and everybody, like there are a lot of groups across US basically doing something, and across the world too. So yes, they ask for your input, like or they say what kind of data do you need from us? Can we provide something? But yeah, there is always a group of modelers working on it, because we have been part of the CDC challenge that they do every year to forecast the influenza season, and there are other kind of challenges like that. There is like a lot of different teams compete somehow every year to forecast the outbreak of the influenza season, not the outbreak and things like that. So yeah, they rely on us too when something like this. They are the coordinators basically.
Okay. This is just outside of all your research, what type of fulfillment do you guys get from your work? Like,
what kind of what?
Like
fulfillment.
What makes you like fulfilled with your work?
Oh, that.
I mean, because you guys must, if you're staying up like working 20-hour days and thinking about disease all day, you guys must love it. If you don't, you're just crazy.
This is my first epidemic,
Yeah.
so I really don't have
Congrats.
anything. You've been through a couple.
Yeah.
But so I was talking about this with people earlier, and that like it's really cool to be able to work on this. However, it's an extra level of stress, because what I do no longer just affects me, or like if I say something dumb, like,
or you have a silly bug in your code that instead of saying there are going to be 10 cases, it says 1,000 cases, and you pass that number to an agency and saying, we will have 1,000 cases of this. And it was like, oh, no, I divide by the wrong number, and now I have, it's a lot of stress in that sense. Yeah. So, yeah, and I'm seeing, like, in return that, things are useful for the people that can take decisions. I think it's the most important part of our work.
You feel the same way, Jessica?
Yeah, I mean, I hopefully it's good work, and hopefully it's useful, and I feel weird saying this, but I'm privileged to be in this position to be able to like learn from like you and like everyone else in our group who've done this before, and it's like the first epidemic outbreak of the decade. So
this decade started off crazy, huh? There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So, can you just elaborate on the difference between an epidemic and a pandemic?
Yeah, so a pandemic, as defined by the WHO, is, and why we're not using the word pandemic to describe the coronavirus, is that you need, in order for something to be a pandemic, there needs to be sustained human-to-human transmission, meaning that the virus can be passed by some type of like particles or something between people, in 2 countries. And right now we only have 1.
Okay.
And
so we have an epidemic right now.
We have an epidemic, but not a pandemic.
Pan. That's the Latin root for all.
Yeah.
World.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
Yep. And epi is just over it.
Yeah, centered.
Yeah.
I got it. I'm not much of an academic, but I'm learning.
What qualifies something to be just an epidemic then? Like, I could get the cold, but is that an epidemic?
It has to be a new emergent disease.
Okay.
It's got to be spreading fast.
No, it has to be new.
Yeah, and it has to spread quick too, right?
Yeah, well.
Or else it's just like, dude, you have a cut on your leg, right?
Well, HIV spreads relatively slowly, right? So it's not spreading as quickly as like the coronavirus
But it's still a pandemic.
But it's still but it's an epidemic or a pandemic.
Well, no, it's a pandemic. It's all worldwide, right?
It's
It's all good. So what are you guys now expecting, given your research, to happen with the virus?
I think it's still, like, in the next week or 2 is going to be make it or break it. I think it's still too early to say whether this will become widespread, because, like we said, China's doing a great job, like, quarantining cities, and I think I read that they built a hospital, like, over a week.
And now I think it's a second hospital.
Oh, they built 2 now?
Yeah.
Just for coronavirus patients? So they're doing a great job trying to contain this, and, like, it could still work. This could just stop. But I think
But-
it's still too early to tell.
Yeah.
So, like, worst case scenario, given your research, it could pretty easily spread to other Asian countries at a rapid rate.
Like, that is a possibility. But
That would suck.
that would suck.
Yeah.
But I mean, most of the cases like we've seen are are mild to an extent. They're not dire
Yeah.
unless you have pre-existing conditions.
Yeah, see, that's
So-
interesting that you guys say that because, again, like, traditional media they'll distort the facts and they'll be like, well, like, 300 people have died. But, I mean, if an old person catches the flu, they don't
They
have
die.
the strength.
And
Like,
again, it's like 500 deaths, I think, now
Mhm.
in China and 2 other countries, I think.
no
but-
deaths in the U.S., right? I know there's like
No,
12 cases
but-
in the U.S.
10,000 deaths of flu
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
year here. So,
And when you think about it,
And more people die in car accidents.
that's
yeah.
true. Again, China has like 20 to 30 million people in Wuhan. And so you only see like 30,000 reported cases. So out of
It's
millions
1%.
of people, like the incidence is still relatively low.
Yeah, and you guys are calm, but I mean, anytime everyone's like, there's a rapid spreading disease, there's just like mass hysteria. It's like, this is the end.
Yeah.
It's not the end.
If
It's
you
not
guys
the
think the world would end in one way, do you think it would be disease,
No, climate change.
climate change?
Ooh,
I have no idea.
I don't know either. Climate change is a good answer.
That is a good answer.
I could see a pandemic killing us all. Not this one. Not this one.
Alien
Not
invasion.
this one. No, this one. Yeah, please.
Like, but a bad one. Like a worse one.
Alien invasion,
And missiles.
missiles.
Missile will kill us all if people
We're gonna kill
stop.
ourselves.
Yeah. if people don't get vaccinated.
Why are this isn't supposed to be?
This is going the different direction. We shouldn't go that
well,
way.
You gotta listen to the podcast after this. This happens a lot. Why do, and this is probably going to sound like a vicious generalization again, but why does it seem like all these terrible diseases come from China? Like, I know the bird flu, right? The swine flu.
Well, these diseases are coming from, so at least what's expected from this one is that it was it started off as a disease that would only affect, I think, bats or
Bats
like
and cats is
animals.
what I heard.
And some mammals in general, like
Yeah.
I think MERS, that is from the same family, it affects
camel.
camels. SARS was coming from a
Bats.
civet cat. I don't know.
cat?
I
Oh,
don't know.
Siberian tiger?
No. It's something like a civet cat. It's like
Civet
some.
cat?
It's. I think it's something that.
I think it's a civet cat, but I have no idea what
It's,
that
I
is.
don't think it's a
What
cat.
is a Tibet cat?
I don't know. People should be googling this.
I'm gonna research that after. Okay, so
Yeah,
you were
so
saying-
it jumps from
Yeah,
The
from
animal-
species.
community to humans. And so since humans don't have this natural immunity to like some of the diseases, it makes them very susceptible.
Yeah, and these things are happening like more often than you think that
Yeah.
like you get like the flu from a bird or something because for instance the flu is like mutating all the time. That's why you have to get your vaccine every single year for the flu. And sometimes those viruses are not good at transmitting themselves to another person, so that person that got the flu from I don't know from some animal then won't transmit it and the virus ends there, right? Because the virus, what it wants, like we know from the movies, they want to keep going, right? So
What program do you guys use in the lab? Do you use SPSS?
no.
That's a statistical software, right? I don't know.
I'm trying,
used it in
I'm trying my hardest. Okay.
No, so basically if you want like the details, I think our like the core of the program is written in Julia,
Julia. Oh, okay.
okay? And
Okay,
most
yeah.
of our analysis is done with Python.
That's, I believe, so our podcast has an Alexa skill. I believe they use the Julia to code the podcast Alexa skill. But again, I'm not the stats guy. At what point, this is also irrelevant to the virus, at what point did you guys realize, like, I would love to learn the data behind spreading infections and how information spreads? Was there an epiphany in your life where you guys like, this would be really cool to do?
I think for me it was more like a step-by-step situation. I studied physics, then I did my PhD in complex networks and complex system and network science. So that's it's like a mix of the things that we actually do. And then when you study things spreading, sometimes it's a virus, sometimes it's information. So the system underlying and the mechanism are very similar. So
it's just like in the progression of your career.
Yeah.
You kind of learned what you like.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah. I guess as an undergrad, I studied math and communications. And so they seem like two very different majors, but I really liked the intersection of like using math and using computer science or physics to kind of study, like,
Pull them together, kind of.
Yeah. And that's what network science does in a way. Like, you can represent a lot of different complex systems with a network. So studying, like, think about Facebook, where you have a social network where you have friends that are linked to other people. And so the structure of that is actually really interesting, and you can understand a lot about like kind of the global structure of this network just from like looking at it. So
You guys are always the smartest in your classes.
no.
Don't lie to me.
No.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Me and Slugs aren't big students, so.
But you guys are learning.
Absolutely. I'm learning a lot right now. This is great.
Experiential learning. That's what we're doing.
Learning through doing. Yeah, we should just
Yeah.
go to China and catch it. And then you guys can test me.
That's not our job.
Yeah, you're right.
Not a doctor.
Are there any professionals at Northeastern that are actually studying the biological aspect of the disease right now that you guys work closely with?
Not that we
No.
work with.
I know that not at Northeastern, but we also are working with groups in Italy, and that's the only country I can think of right now, and China. And so I think there are groups in China that actually studying the biological aspects of that. I'm not very familiar with their work, but.
Okay, so let's say the coronavirus is like totally debunked, right? The whole wave, it's not popular anymore. It's over.
Okay.
Then what are you guys doing next?
Go back to
Back to
the
the
normal job. Yeah.
Oh, you must be so sick of reading about the flu.
I have a question about the flu vaccine in general. So, like, since you said you have to get a vaccine every year, is the vaccine just a prediction of what the flu is going to be, or do they just take, like, they're like, oh, this person has the flu first, we're going to take the proteins or flu or whatever. I
think how they do it is basically there's a group of people that basically analyze the test of like the different strains that are happening in the southern hemisphere or the northern hemisphere, and then they say, okay, this strain of the flu is circulating more here, or this one is more there. Basically, they pick a combo of things and they put them in the vaccine. Basically.
So they guess.
So basically, they guess.
So it is like a prediction.
It's
like, oh, maybe this year this is what it'll be.
Yeah, and some years they get it right. And
An
some years they get
educated
it wrong.
guess.
Whoa.
But you still need to get it.
I
Because
got it.
10,000 people die every year of flu.
10,000 Americans, right?
10,000 Americans.
That's crazy. I didn't realize it was that high.
And is that data also disregarding old people who might already be sick, or is that including it?
I think
think it's
the
including
website,
everybody.
I think it includes it.
Okay.
Includes everything.
What are the most reliable websites and sources that you guys use to gather data? Is there like one central network of stuff you guys usually grab from?
You would think.
Yeah.
You would hope,
Yeah.
but no.
No.
I think if you're a normal person trying to learn about like the coronavirus and what you can do to protect yourself, it's just go to the CDC website or the WHO website to understand, I guess, the national and global effects. For me, getting data and getting like updated news on who else is studying the virus, I go to Twitter.
Yeah.
And that's
like everyone else, right?
Yeah, and because what's really cool is that the community of scientists that are studying this disease are like doing their own research in their own lab, but then they're posting it for the most part like publicly available, not you don't have to go through any like paywalls like normal journals do, and in order to put their results out there, because for our models we need to understand like estimates of the virus, like how long, like the incubation period, or how long you're infectious for. And so we're glad that other people do that work.
So there are trusted resources on Twitter that you're like, okay, I trust what this guy is putting out there.
If they're like a professor at another university, or if they run their own lab,
Is there you had mentioned a little bit earlier how there are other people that do what you do in the U.S. In Boston specifically, given that it's such a medical-based community. Are there other people doing what you guys do?
Yeah, so there's actually another professor at Northeastern who is Sam Scarpino, who is working with Harvard Medical School and some other international locations I can't remember, that are doing the disease parameter estimate research and taking as much data that they can and from all the different cases in China and kind of combining it and doing like a large-scale analysis on it.
So before we end the episode 1, I know I told you guys like 10 times to wear long sleeves. I'm sorry for totally freezing. It gets so cold back here. I would keep the heat on, but what happens is the fan, it picks it up on the mic, so the audio's not as clear. But so what are your predictions and your scientific predictions, your data-backed predictions about where the coronavirus is going? Famous last words, like.
You're asking us where we think the coronavirus is going to hit next?
Yes, and how much more will it grow on a global level?
I think it's too early to say that, because right now I think we are not projecting our model projections don't go far after like end of February, because a lot of things can happen in this month. So if we predict that are gonna be, I'm just throwing numbers here, like millions of cases by March, because it's just exponential growth, it's like it's not gonna be the case, because there are gonna be interventions and all these numbers that have to be updated every week probably. So we will have to do all over again what we have done so far in a week, basically. So that's, at least that was my experience when I was working with Ebola or all these other outbreaks before. It's like you do this, but then you have your numbers, and then, you have people that, they close the city so nobody can leave, and, you don't see as many cases as you were predicting, so you have to readjust your model, and it changes as you are, as you are getting more data, you get like a better feeling of what is going on. But I think at this point it's like we have to be cautious. Yeah.
What do you think, Jessica?
I'm going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
I think like in the next couple of weeks, we got to see what happens. I mean, like this thing could die out in China, or it could not.
We'd be like really screwed if we found out someone in like Greenland had it, right?
Finland has it.
Someone in Finland has it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If we just start seeing random pop-ups in like different parts of the world.
Well, the thing is, like if you think about it, there are like almost 30 countries that observe countries already. But the thing is, like, it's always someone that traveled from Wuhan or was in contact with someone from Wuhan. So still, like, are easy to track.
But if they find out, like a lion has it in Madagascar, it's game over.
A lion in Madagascar?
Just like
lion.
Just like random.
Well,
oh.
Madagascar has bigger problems than
sure.
coronavirus. Like, they have the plague still, so.
Yeah, question. Do you guys use data? What's like the farthest back you guys will use data from? Like, do you have like data on the polio and diseases like that?
No, we usually, what we model is human to human transmission diseases. Polio is not.
I don't know enough.
No, it's through the contaminated water, basically, and feces and things like that. So it's like not like just being in contact with someone that has polio, you will get polio, that kind of stuff.
Has your research on Ebola helped your research with this case?
Yeah, well, I know more or less how intensive it's gonna be in the lab, how it's like you're gonna work like 24/7, and you will have to change your model a million times because you are getting
More
first
variables,
you are starting with like some sort of crappy data, and then things, you start like gathering more information, and then you have better estimate for the parameters of the model. So you have to run everything like many times until you get like a meaningful result, basically.
What is your day-to-day like right now? Like realistically, how many hours are you sleeping right now?
Definitely more than our boss.
Yeah. we do like 7 hours maybe.
Yeah.
And then
I'd say
like 17 hours in the lab.
Yeah, let's say 1 hour on the T.
Yeah.
Commuting, and then
I'd say we get to work at 9. Hopefully we leave by 9.
Yeah.
And
On a good day.
on a good day.
On a good day.
So what are you doing in the lab? Are you just like watching the news, getting data? What are you like doing hour by hour in the lab?
So I guess like most recently we've been working on like a report. So we've been doing all this research with like our model and analyzing the effect of the travel ban in Wuhan, and is it actually effective or not? And so then from that, like you have to figure out a way, okay, well how am I gonna tell the other researchers in the world about this? Like what is the best way? And so we've been writing a report, making lots of very intensive figures.
And and also what we because we can run any model, we can put any parameters, and we will get the number. Then the most difficult part for us is always trying to validate our model, because if nothing that you say can be corroborated with something that you didn't use on the calibration of your model, it's like as good as nothing. So for us, it's also a very important part now, trying to find, see what other people are finding. Like if we say the outbreak started around December, and our models say that actually started in July, then you're wrong. So we need to, find things that make help us to corroborate like the assumptions of our model, basically.
Are you guys having fun?
Yeah.
Jessica, don't lie to me.
Yeah,
Jessica's tired, man.
No, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
we
tired.
are.
That's we're all tired. That's
We're all
accurate.
tired.
But it's interesting. I am hesitant to use the word fun because
Fast
people are
paced.
sick. Yes.
Yes. Whatever you did last night, it was
It's gonna be different.
it
and
was
wrong.
gonna be different tomorrow, and you thought that you have everything ready to submit like mid-afternoon, and then you realize that, maybe if we add this, and then you have to start all over again. So we did. Jessica at some point say that she was feeling good about this version of the work, and that was like version 8 of whatever we were running. And I say, well, I won't feel confident until we are on version 30 or 40. That's more or less.
We're on
More
37
fun.
right
Yeah,
now. so-
we're on 37.
I was on like the website with a bunch of your data, and I'm like, whoa, they have like reports coming
Well,
out
yeah.
every single day.
Yeah, those ones were very crazy. I was the one updating those reports, and I was like finishing and trying to put everything on the website, and someone say there is a new case somewhere else. So I have to redo the analysis, rewrite the paper, and resubmit. So it's like at some point I say, okay, I'm gonna wait until midnight when the news outlets are sleeping or something.
It's crazy too because it's on the other side of the world, so it's like literally 24/7. You have news coming from the United States during one half of the day, and news from China the other half. It's wild. You guys, your heads must be exploding. That's crazy.
This is irrelevant to the research, but has there been an economic impact with the disease in Wuhan? Like,
I would imagine. I'm not, I haven't seen anything, but my guess is,
must be.
like you are shutting down transportation.
I think there are
So-
some Chinese markets were like.
Well, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
yeah. What about Chinese international?
I don't know much about that, honestly, but
Yeah, I mean, I guess
they were
if
affected. They were saying.
if you're shutting down, if you're quarantining a city, then people can't get out, supplies can't get out. Supplies are probably going in. Like, I don't think they'd completely.
Well, the
Hopefully.
medical companies are probably killing it.
Yeah.
Whoever owns the masks and makes those, making $1 million.
Should invest in some stocks.
Yeah.
That's right.
No, it's too late now.
Foreign markets. Okay, well, hey, did you guys have fun?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a blast. I learned a lot. Thank you.
Thank
Slugs,
you.
any
You're
last
welcome.
questions?
No, I'm good.
Slugs, you killed it. Way to go.
Thanks.
Nice. Then.
Hi, I'm Anna,
Hi, I'm Jessica.
and this was our golden hour.